Hello, YouTube. My name is Alan, and it's that time once again. Let's talk metal. For this episode, we're going to be talking about one of the great US power speed metal bands of the 1980s, and that band is Savage Grace. I've talked about them from time to time, shown their records on other videos and other topics, but never actually sat down and walked through their discography for folks. So that is what we shall do this time. Savage Grace always felt like one of those bands that should have become one of the true icons of 80s US heavy metal, like real heavy metal, not just hairspray metal or thrash or something, but just pure 100% US steel. But it never quite worked out. There's a couple of important lessons I think we can learn from looking at Savage Grace's history. One thing is, you really do need to find a label to stick with that will support you. And Savage Grace always had trouble with that. They hopped around onto different labels with almost every single release. It's really hard to ever build momentum when you've got, a different label owner and different PR people working with you every other year. Second lesson you can learn from Savage Grace is you gotta have a vocalist. You just gotta settle in on somebody. Savage Grace has gone through something like seven vocalists. As we're going to see, almost every single release has a different singer on it. And most of them are at least decent. Some of them are exceptional. But when you keep changing who's singing in the band, that's just a very hard way to build any momentum as well. We can say that, yes, it takes, all members to make a band and that stuff, but you really do have to have, sort of that core front man to head things up. It's kind of like being a quarterback in the NFL. If you don't have a solid quarterback, your team's just not going to go very far. I think we all know that, especially fans of the Washington franchise. Yeah, about that. But anyway, regardless, despite the label hopping and the constant switching behind the mic stand, Savage Grace still made a lot of really killer music, and that's what we're going to talk about. So I first got introduced to Savage Grace reading this old issue of Sentinel Steel magazine. This is issue number 2. I believe this is a 95 issue. I think this one came out in 95. A lot of good stuff in it. Sentinel Steel was a US underground zine, also a label for a while, and is still a distro. They have a presence on both eBay and on Discogs. So yeah, Dennis has been doing this stuff for 30 or so years now. And in this particular issue, he has a short interview with the main guy behind Savage Grace. His name is Christian. The last name I will probably butcher. To me, it looks like Luge, but it may be like Logue. Not sure. Apologies for not getting it right. But yeah, we'll just stick to Christian. Christian was the guitarist and kind of the mastermind behind Savage Grace. Just trying to flip to one of the pages here, but again, it was only a couple of page interview with him. But still, the description really caught my mind. One thing that stood out right away was at the beginning of it. Here we go. Yeah, and this little intro blurb. Dennis kind of says that, when he was starting up Sentinel Steel, three things that he wanted to kind of encapsulate that really sort of highlight his tastes in heavy metal were the three words power, steel, and grace. And he's like, and this band exemplifies all three of those qualities perfectly, which is why he featured them. So yeah, that caught my attention. It's like, yeah, okay, I should probably look for something by this band. But by the time this came out in the mid 90s, the band had been history for quite a while. Seemed like it wasn't going to be an easy thing to track down. But towards the end of it, I think this is one that jumps around pages a bit. But Dennis ends up mentioning that, while he had been in contact with Christian, he had gotten a limited number of picture discs of their debut album, which was an item that was already kind of hard to find back then. He was offering them for sale for a very reasonable price. Dennis was always good about that. He was never like really gouging folks on the price or trying to charge top dollar. It was always pretty reasonable there. And so I saw that and I was just like, oh, that would be cool to get. But he only had a limited number. Uh, well, I'll check and see. So I contacted him. And sure enough, he still had at least one of them. I don't know if I got the very last one. It's a possibility because I wasn't able to jump on it right away. Uh, Nevertheless, I ended up picking that up, and we'll show that a little bit later. So that was my introduction to Savage Grace. Got it, loved the LP instantly, and over time kind of worked on accumulating more and more of their stuff. Now, the world's introduction to Savage Grace was a demo they did in 1982. They were already on their second vocalist by this point. Kind of fun trivia fact, their original vocalist, Kelly Rhodes, is a relative of the late, great Randy Rhodes. But Kelly was only in the band for about a year or so. So they moved on to vocalist number two. I believe his name is Dwight Howard. And no, that's not right. Sorry. Names are not always my strong suit. So let's double check here. Dwight Cliff. There we go. So Dwight Cliff was the vocalist on the 1982 demo, and one of those demo tracks ended up making its way onto the Metal Massacre Volume 2 compilation. So very early days of Metal Blade, when they were still basically working out of Brian's mom's bedroom kind of situation. But yeah, here towards the end of side A, you've got Savage Grace with Scepters of Deceit. It's an excellent track and kind of helped get Savage Grace onto people's radar. And that's what we'll check out our first clip of. So let's hear a snippet of Scepters of Deceit from Savage Grace, the demo from 1982, the compilation album released in 1983. All right, so yeah, that gives you a really good idea of what sound Savage Grace is going for. They're described alternatively as power metal and speed metal, and you can hear why. There's, definitely a faster pace to their music, but it's not flat out balls to the wall speed metal in the sense of like an Agent Steel or Holy Terror. And at the same time, while they have a very power metal structure, it feels like it's, a little bit faster, quicker paced than maybe some of their contemporaries from the early 80s scene. So yeah, they kind of blend those two elements really, really well. You've got, strong riffs, a good little kind of crunchy rumble there in the background, and very good guitar playing. Christian's always been a bit of a hot shot on guitarist in the best possible way, very talented at that. So the demo and the exposure on Metal Massacre Volume 2 was enough to get them an offer from Metal Blade to put out their first EP, which came out in 1983. Well, let me check. This one 83 or 84? I'm sometimes off by a year in this band's catalog. But yes, the EP is 1983, and it is known as The Dominatress. I'm pretty sure that's not Tawny Kitaen. We'll just go ahead and get that joke out of the way right there. But yeah, early EP. This is Metal Blade's release 1006. So one of the first things to come out on the label. It features a new vocalist. Dwight Cliff is out of the band by this point, and John Burke is the new singer. A couple of tracks were reused from the demo, some are not. We're going to check out a little bit of the title track, The Dominatress, and see what Savage Grace sounds like on their first official EP. right. So yeah, you can tell they're still operating very much in the same mold. Good crunchy riff in the background, moves along very quickly. John Burke's doing the vocals pretty well there. Got a little bit of a sneer to his voice, but it works for the style quite all right. And it's a very good EP. I had a vinyl copy of it a long time ago. Don't seem to have it anymore. Thought I still did, but apparently I traded it or sold it at some point. But nevertheless, good early example of that kind of classic Metal Blade sound from, the first 3 or 4 volumes of the Metal Massacre series. A lot of bands were playing that style. It's a style of heavy metal I really love. Kind of predates, when thrash and glam metal and eventually death metal would sort of start to take over and dominate the US scene. Those genres are great too, and like lots of bands in them. But this kind of, early stuff before American metal started splintering into those different genres is a lot of really cool music, in my opinion. So, on the strength of this EP, Savage Grace would get ready to make their debut LP, but there would have to be some changes, of course. So, yep, lineup shuffles happen. They don't stay on Metal Blade for the album for some reason. The debut album is called Master of Disguise. Came out in 1985, so there's a year gap in between. I've seen some demo tracks listed from 1984 here and there, but I don't know if there was ever an official demo or if it's just like, I think it's just a song here and a song there that happened to be recorded. For the debut LP, the band moved over to Important Records, which is a name you see associated with some releases throughout the 1980s. Um, we saw on the EP the band was going for, kind of a little bit of a risque cover art, and it's a trend they would, well, pretty much always stick to. Maybe they thought it was going to help. Doesn't seem to have. But anyway, the important pressing of Master of Disguise is this one. The police mascot's name apparently is Knutson, and well, that's closer to Tony Katane, but yeah, probably still not Tony Katane. I don't think she had to do this type of work. So yeah, questionable cover art aside, the debut LP features yet another vocalist, and this one is Michael John Smith. And we'll go ahead and check out a clip so you can hear what Michael's capable of on vocals. There's an intro to the album, and then this is the first full track, Bound to Be Free. Yeah, Michael Smith absolutely kills it on this. He is a fantastic singer, great voice. The music is top notch on the album as well. The band has taken what they were doing before, refined it, and sharpened it. And almost every track on this album is just as good as what you just heard. It is a fantastic album, almost flawless front to back. The one thing that has always held this album back, and you probably heard it in that clip, the album's production kind of stinks. Yeah, the bass is very buried. The drums are very clicky sounding. The snare is too sharp. There's just no bottom end to the album. The production is bad enough to be distracting. which is a real shame because the songs are top notch. And this really should be kind of right up there next to things like, Omen's Battle Cry and Jagdpanzer's Ample Destruction in the pantheon of best US power metal albums from the 1980s. Even with the bad production job, I think it's pretty darn close to those. But the production, it is a thing you have to kind of listen through a bit, sad to say. There's some weird variants on the album that are worth pointing out too. The first thing I showed was the important pressing of it. The CD I've shown a couple of times is just a reissue. It has both Master of Disguise and then the Dominatress on it. There have been a few different CD pressings of Savage Grace's catalog, and they typically do this, where it's like an LP plus an EP. You'll see why there's more of those in just a minute. But these aren't the only versions of Master of Disguise that you can get. The album did get licensed by Black Dragon Records for a European release. And the cover image is obviously done a little different. You're kind of zoomed in a bit more on the people in the shot. The logo just goes straight across the top instead of being at an angle and is in white. In the title also down here is in white instead of in red font. So there again is the Black Dragon version. And there again is the US version on Important. I believe these also have different inserts, if I remember right. The Black Dragon one has lyrics. Haven't pulled both of these out side by side in a long time. Yeah, the Black Dragon insert has lyrics on it. Whereas the Important insert has pictures, kind of a photo collage, and all the lyrics crammed onto one side of it. So differences there as well. But wait, there's more. Important also pressed up a small number of copies on clear vinyl. So it's pretty distinctive looking. It's got, the red center labels, but just, colorless, clear wax. Those are extremely rare. Um, you see them once in a great while on something like Discogs, but people want very, very insane prices for them. We're talking like, I checked before making the video. I think there's one copy currently listed for $2,600. It's like, I don't know if there's a big enough Savage Grace fan who needs to spend 2,500 plus to get that version. It is very rare. They do not turn up very often whatsoever. Um, but I don't know that price. I don't know what that's based on. Maybe once or twice somebody has sprang and paid that much for it. I would think somewhere around like a few $100s would be a much more reasonable price, for a, serious but pragmatic collector to try to pay for one. But hey, vinyl prices have been insane since the late 2010s, early 2020s. At the same time, I don't expect that copy will sell on Discogs anytime soon. But wait, there's more for Master of Disguise. I told you at the beginning that my introduction to the band was getting the picture disc version of the album through Sentinel Steel. For the picture disc, they used slightly different cover art, which is this. I won't leave this on screen too long. It was kind of tasteless even for the mid 1980s. But yeah, again, just a different photo from the same picture shoot. The thing that was kind of unfortunate for me when I got the picture disc was at the time I didn't own a record player. I was at college, ordered it. Dennis from Sentinel Steel sent it to me right away. It's like, great, I can't wait to hear this. I don't have a record player. Oh, but they do have record players over in the library. I can take it to the music lab in the library and play it there. But then when I saw what was on the picture disc, I'm like, I don't think I can take this to the library and play it. So that didn't work out. What I had to do was I did take it to the library, but the flip side of the picture disc is the band photo from the CD. And if I can get the bloody thing out of here, we'll show the flip side. So yes, I basically took it to the library and played this side face up on the turntable because again, this was like an open air music lab. You just would walk around and see what everybody was playing. So yeah, we only played this side in the campus library, and yeah, I had to wait a couple of probably a month or two before I went home and could dub it off onto a cassette tape on my dad's turntable. So yeah, the flip side is just as good as the first side. So again, I knew the tracks were great. Once you get through all those variants, yes, you're left with the undeniably classic record. And again, like I said, should be considered right there beside things like Hellstar and Omen for the real pinnacle of US power metal. The band could have gone into big things from here. It felt like they had the voice now. Michael Smith, as I said, that's a killer vocalist. And it's the only thing he recorded with the band because pretty soon he was out as well. And just to make it even worse, to add sort of insult to injury here, Michael Smith only went on to perform on one other record with one other band ever. Same year, 1985, he appeared with a band named Prototype. And he didn't even do lead vocals for Prototype. He played like keyboards and did backing vocals for them. They were a band, they made like one 4-track EP and then disappeared. So nobody ever heard of them. You got to be a pretty sick little monkey to go track down the Prototype EP, just because it has John Michael Smith on it. Okay, yes, I'm that kind of sick little monkey. This is the Prototype EP, and there's the man himself, yeah, Michael John Smith, and just yep, mainly sticking to the keyboards and backing vocals, and that's it. Those are the only recording credits he has on Metal Archives. The one immaculate Savage Grace album, and this one 4-track EP for Prototype. I don't know why he left the music business. People do that for a million reasons: religion, family obligations, disillusionment, got a real job offer. I don't know, but heavy metal lost something pretty special when Michael followed a different path. Sad but true. Savage Grace would persevere on, though. Another album comes out just a year later in 1986. And this time the band is slimmed down. Christian is taking over vocals himself, so he's doing guitars and vocals. There's another lineup change at this stage, and I'm trying to remember who it is. Let's see. Christian's still in the band, of course. Beast is still on bass. Let's see. Mark Markwell comes on as second guitarist for this one. And at some point they switched drummers too. This may be where their new drummer came in. Sorry, you can track all the individual lineup changes through Metal Archives if you want. But for the 1986 album, they go back to Metal Blade Records and Restless Records for the release of After the Fall from Grace. Clever title, works nicely with the band's name, extra points for that. And yep, another this cover here with sort of a damsel in distress thing going on. I always thought that maybe this was like some kind of Marie Antoinette thing. And she's like, "Did I say cake? I didn't mean cake. Eat anything you like." I don't know. Bad things are about to happen here. But so yeah, back on Metal Blade for album number 2, third piece of vinyl, third vocalist. How does Christian sound behind the mic? Well, let's check out a little bit of the title track from this one. So here's part of After the Fall from Grace. For this one, I'll skip past the intro. It takes a little while to get going, and we'll kind of jump into the song. Yeah, they still sound unbelievably fantastic on this album. Christian does a good job on vocals. I think he sounds quite good at it. Has a good voice for this style. And once again, the music is just top notch. Perfect blend of power and speed. Has a little bit of that kind of, again, classy, majestic side like you'd expect from a band such as Omen or Hellstar or even Jagdpanzer. Uh, Top-notch stuff. Absolutely. There's not a bad track on the album. This album also comes in a few different variations, not as crazy as the debut. Again, this one is just kind of, yep, your standard metal blade pressing. Note though, again, title and band logo both in red. Years ago, I was at a record show just flipping through boxes of a dealer I know, and he had a copy of it. I was looking at it and just like, that looks wrong. Something's wrong about that. And it took me a minute or two, but I was like, that is wrong. I have this record. That is not what mine looks like. So I took it out and looked at it, and sure enough, it was a different pressing. Uh, the pressing that Andy had that I was looking at here at the record show was a Black Dragon pressing. And it looks like this. It's the same cover picture, but this time the band's logo is in white, outlined in red, and the album title is actually a sort of a gold foil embossed stamp here. It's actually the letters are slightly raised on the cover, which I think looks really, really good on this one. So, yes, I'm that kind of sick little monkey. I bought this because I thought it looked cool, even though I already had the other copy. This one has been reissued as well. Again, you can get some different two-on-one kind of things. I thought it was interesting for this particular CD reissue that they kind of mixed the two a little bit. They used the white band logo with the red outline, but kept the album title in red the way it was on the original album. So kind of weird that they didn't use either for the reissue, but they kind of blended the two. Which, yeah, hey, that works too. Regardless, after the fall from grace, another fantastic US power metal release. It's another one that is held back a little bit by its production. It's maybe just a little thin, a little lightweight sounding. Some of these CD reissues, this particular one comes with the original mix on one disc and a sort of like remastered, remixed version of it on the other disc. So you can hear an attempt to clean it up a little bit on some of these reissues if you're interested. But again, even though the production is not exactly top notch, the music shines through. And both of these LPs, yeah, they are top notch US power metal stuff. The band would soldier on a bit more. 1987 saw them on yet another label, this time Flame Trader. Christian stays on vocals at this point, so we don't have to endure yet another vocalist. And they put out another this time a four-track EP that's known as Ride Into the Night. The B-side has kind of a stylized S and G locked together for the logo. The flip side of this has another kind of racy cover of band members with ladies kneeling in front of them who seem to have nothing covering the top half of their bodies. That they kept going for that kind of thing. What can I say? This EP is also fairly good, but it shows the band may be starting to move towards a bit more of a hard rock style. Nothing glam or that was really going to be overtly commercial, but for example, there's a cover of Deep Purple's Burn on it. Good song, and they do a good cover of it, but you can get the sense that maybe they're starting to feel like the power speed metal thing isn't where they're going to find their fame and fortune. But again, it's not a bad EP at all. And for proof, let's check out a little bit of the title track, Ride Into the Night. All right. So, yeah, once again, that song could have fit in on After the Fall from Grace pretty easily. They're still doing some good tracks on the EP, but there's only three originals and one cover song, so not a lot of material there. And this is kind of where the Savage Grace story ground to a halt for a while. This EP also did not, turn them into rock or metal superstars. And again, the band went their separate ways. As I said, by the time this interview with Christian came out in the mid 90s, uh, the band was completely inactive. It mentions in here that the band was working on a CD reissue of their material. I don't think that came to fruition for a long time. If there was a mid 90s CD pressing, I'm unaware of it. I think it took a number of years before everything finally lined up and some of the reissues started happening. There is more in the band's discography, however. But here I've got to turn to Metal Archives for some help. There's an EP called The Lost Grace from 2010, but that is actually just a 7-inch single. It's got a couple of demo tracks on it. Oh, sorry, it's okay. It does have four tracks. It's not just two. What does it say about the recording info on these, though? We've got, yeah, previously unreleased demo recordings from December of 1983, and it came with Snake Pit issue 18. All right, I knew it came with some magazine, but yeah, there were some copies on green vinyl and others on black. Had lyric insert and all of that. So this came out late 83, so after the EP, or was recorded in 83. After the EP, um, before you would have really gotten close to releasing Master of Disguise. So yeah, copies of that have always shown up. They must have made a lot of them for Snake Pit. So that is out there where you can hear those tracks. Then there was a compilation in 2021. It's called New York Daze, Daze. Now that title has you a little bit concerned. You probably should be. This features a lot of the unrecorded stuff once the band had relocated to New York and started operating in much more of just a hard rock bar blues type of band. I've heard a few songs from that era, and they're not bad at that style, but I mean, it's kind of ridiculous to still be calling it Savage Grace at that point. It musically has almost no connection to what they did in the 1980s. The only constant being that, it's still Christian's band. After that, they released a few singles leading up to 2023 when they did put out a new full-length album. This was called Sign of the Cross, came out on Massacre Records. To be honest, I had forgotten about it before I sat down to do this video, which kind of tells you my opinion of it. I did check this one out when it came out. The first thing is that it has really weird cover art. I don't have a copy of it, but we'll get it to focus in here. Um, yeah, this whole thing with the lady in armor kneeling next to the guy bleeding out rose petals on the floor or something next to the chalice, and there's kind of cartoony stuff in the background. It's such a weird mishmash of styles and stuff. I don't know what to make of it. It almost feels like what would happen if you asked Chat GPT to make you some cover art, but you were using Windows 95? I don't know. I don't like it at all. The perspectives seem really messed up. Yeah, it just doesn't come together as an image at all. It's too busy. It's too cluttered. Having the album title down this way in a weird font. You've got, words over here. Just nah, no, not a good art direction. Musically, the album is not terrible. It does not stick to that hard rock New York style they did. There are a couple of tracks on here that kind of hint at the old glory from the 1980s. I got to check the track list. The opener, Barbarians at the Gate. This is a pretty fast, forceful number. Does feature yet another vocalist. His name's Gabriel Colon, I think is how you pronounce it. He's sang with a couple of other bands in recent years, like Lynch Mob. Pretty good vocalist. It sounds to me a little bit like a slightly more nasal version of Rob Halford, at least on this Savage Grace outing. And, Judas Priest is not a bad point of comparison for the better, more metallic tracks on here. It does sound a little bit like modern era Judas Priest in a way. And part of that is definitely coming from the vocal department. But yeah, that one, Sign of the Cross, the title track, also a pretty good heavy metal number. So there are some here that are decent. There are some, though, that start to stray back towards just not commercial fare, but definitely stuff that feels like it's maybe a little bit more rock out, hard rockin' party music to a degree. You get a little bit of that. There's a bonus track, Helsinki's Nights, which feels that way. Slave of Desire, kind of the same. There's a track called Stealing My Heart Away. Yeah, stuff like that. So yeah, it's not a total wash. It's not one of it has some really bad reviews on Metal Archives. And if you got this wanting the entire album to sound like Master of Disguise or After the Fall from Grace, yeah, you would be pretty upset and disappointed. At the same time, you should not be buying a new Savage Grace album in 2023, which is what, 30-ish years after they released their last full-length album? 86 to 33. What are we looking at there? 30, 33, 36 years later? If there's a 36-year gap in the band's catalog, you can't expect them to come back and sound exactly like they did 36 years ago. Maybe one or two bands have pulled that off. I can't think of one off the top of my head. Some bands do a solid job on their reunion albums, don't get me wrong. While I'm not a big follower of a lot of these reunion projects, I'll readily admit some of them do just fine. But you can't expect it. I mean, these guys, they're yeah, they're 30 some years older. They're not going to have, exactly the same experience, the same influences, the same kind of, fire influences. Nothing's going to be the same here. So the fact that it at least has a couple of decent songs on it, I think is about as much as you could have hoped for. So, well, yeah, I never picked this one up. I can at least say, like, yeah, it's an up and down, very uneven kind of album, but it's not a total disaster the way more than a few reunion bands projects have turned out. So Savage Grace definitely did a bit better than average, I'd say, when it comes to making a new album after such a long, sort of a long departure from the scene. The other musicians, again, by the way, it's only Christian from the old days on this. The other guys have experience working with different projects. Some of them have worked with Warrell Dane on his solo material, for example. So it's not like he's pulled folks who've never picked up an instrument before or anything like that. It's just that, yeah, the songs are very different in style from song to song, but the good tracks are, yeah, worth checking out. But yeah, that is the Savage Grace story so far. Um, Christian Luge has had some interesting things turn up on the internet. Metal Archives reports that, yeah, he was arrested around 2006 for practicing medicine without a license, of all things. Yeah. Here's a good piece of advice. If you go to the doctor and you realize, like, hey, didn't you play guitar for a metal band back in the mid 80s? Whatever he diagnoses you with, you might want a second opinion on. Just saying. And reportedly, he has been up to that same kind of gig in more recent years in other parts of the world. So yeah, there's some other sort of, iffy things reported, but not necessarily confirmed about him on the internet. If you are someone who really is sensitive to buying things by bands that include members that have gotten in those kinds of trouble, then maybe Savage Grace isn't something you want to pick up. Um, they do have a great legacy of 1980s releases. It's a shame they never got a break back in the day. Both albums are fantastic. Both EPs are just fine as well. Yeah, but again, at the end of the day, you can't keep hopping from label to label to label, and you can't keep replacing your vocalist every 12 months. That's just not a formula to help you really reach your full potential. And Savage Grace had a lot of potential. They're still one of the finest bands in that 80s US power metal scene. But that is going to do it for our look at Savage Grace's discography. So now it's time to talk metal in the comments down below. Um, yeah, feel free to share any other information about the band if you have other things. Again, sorry for not pointing out every individual lineup change. Some members, like Beast, stuck with the band for a very long time. Drummers, they changed drummers a couple of times as well. But yeah, feel free to add any comments, notes. I'm sure some folks saw them live. There have been some live recordings. Once upon a time, I had a live bootleg album by the band that was from the same label that did the infamous Running Wild bootleg on vinyl. I can't remember the name of it, but all the bootlegs in that series, they are black and white covers with like a zoomed in picture of an insect, like a cockroach or other type of bug. The Savage Grace one, you never really see around. I kind of wish I hadn't gotten rid of it, but again, a lot of my records had to go at times in the past. I'm pretty sure King Fowley ended up with my Savage Grace live bootleg from that black and white Euro live demo boot series thing. So, yeah, he might have more information about it. The Running Wild one you see from time to time from those bootleg series, it has a weird name like Black Demon. Is it Black Demons on Stage? It might be a Black Demons on Stage. But yeah, the Savage Grace one was obviously done by the same folks in the same style, but seems to show up a lot more rarely. And hey, there may be some other Savage Grace rarities out there as well. Feel free to mention them in the comments so that collectors can go track them down if they're interested. Well, that is going to do it for this video. Hope that you've enjoyed checking out one of these sort of, great, almost forgotten US power metal bands in Savage Grace. And until next time, everybody take care. And as always, keep banging your head.